Hi everyone, we're so glad you've joined us here at Center for Brain Health for Civics and Service. Let's get started with a brief video underscoring the importance of brain health for you and for society. After that, we'll introduce our speaker.
We work, we live, we innovate and create. At the center of it all is your brain health. The ability to solve problems, think analytically, share empathy, and thrive.
We're trying to make brain performance really the next fitness revolution.
So how do you boost brain power? Welcome to the BrainHealth Project, an urgent call to transform your mind to work stronger and faster.
This is an absolute crisis, as great as any we have ever faced. We have to equip the minds and brains of our citizens to cope with the accelerating, dizzying rate of change that they face in their lives.
Your brain health is not fixed. Scientific discoveries prove it can adapt and grow regardless of your starting point.
Our greatest value, the asset that will help us to change everything, every problem we're in, is all in our head.
To harness that treasure, we must measure and monitor progress while things are going well versus waiting for an injury or disease to strike.
Too many of us are outliving our brains, and that does not have to be the case.
The information age is bombarding us with more content than our human brains can handle. How do you keep from getting lost in this and focus on deep thinking? For starters, stop multitasking.
Science shows us that multitasking is bad for your brain. It reduces fluid intelligence, causes brain atrophy, and increases chronic stress.
The global pandemic is creating more stress than ever, stress that leads to depression and anxiety and beyond. Unlocking our potential to navigate these hurdles starts with learning the right strategies, even in school.
So when teachers have these strategies, they're empowered to support our learners, and then the learners are now able to take ownership of their learning.
Training kids how to think is doubling academic achievement among middle schoolers.
I think the greatest national security threat is pre-K through 12. If we don't take care of educating our young men and women, then we have to ask ourselves, where are we going to be in 20 years?
Our world-renowned scientists know you can increase your brain health, not lose it. It's time for a new category of health, brain health. You are a game changer. Ready to transform the world with us? Be a part of the brain health revolution. It starts here.
There's flexible thinking at play. So welcome to Center for Brain Health at our monthly Civics and Service event. I'm Stephen White, I'm the COO here, and have the joy of working with such a great team to really empower everyone with better brain health and performance. That's what we're all about. You saw a quick snippet about the BrainHealth Project, which is our signature research project, which is going to do for the brain what the Framingham study did for the heart, right? We want to make brain health ubiquitous and available for everybody. And I'm so excited for tonight because learning about Big Thought, you really see the alignment about what they're trying to do and what we're trying to do here. And I'm going to just, these are facts. I'm going to pull from our own cheat sheet what we're all about and then give you a few quotes from Big Thought, and you'll see why I'm so excited to hear from Byron tonight. So we talk about being the architect of your own brain. It's about empowerment and understanding the tools you have available to you to be a better person. We talk about better brain, better life, better world. That's kind of our mantra. When you hear about Big Thought, they start out with such a wonderful mission, which is greatness is in all of us. And it's true. And that's part of what we try to do here is unlock human potential through better brain health. And I'm going to borrow some quotes from Big Thought and then turn it over to Jennifer Zients, who leads the team here on the translational side to make our research very real and very practical, to bring tools to everybody. Who is Big Thought? They're a not-for-profit that equips all youth in marginalized communities with the skills and tools they need to imagine and create their best lives and better world. They help prepare them for further education, work, and life. And listen to this, and help them determine and drive through their own outcomes with tools to navigate real-life challenges. How relevant is that today? How excited we are to have you here, Byron. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Zients to introduce Byron, and then we'll get underway.
Thank you. Cool. Welcome, everybody. We're so happy to have everyone here. I'm super, super excited to have Byron Sanders here tonight. He is president and CEO of Big Thought, which, as you've heard from Steve, what Big Thought is. But thinking about innovation in education and in kids and how do we empower, that's powerful stuff and really, really critical. I love it. Byron is an advocate for education, economic development, and creation of equitable communities. I think, one of Big Thought's goals is preparing kids for tomorrow's creative economy. That's something that we're talking about now is brain economy. So for us, when we think about innovation, creativity, being flexible, being able to be agile, adaptable people in this world, no matter what you're doing, it's a total match. I love it. So Byron has been recognized repeatedly for his leadership, including awards and recognition from Dallas Journal's Minority Business Leaders, Parkland's Foundation Community First Award. He is a great connector of people and ideas. I mean, he comes out of like banking, education, philanthropy, but banking, right? Banking, education, philanthropy, entrepreneurism. All of these things lead to being a really highly active and engaged member of the community. And Byron, we are so excited for you to be part of our community and to hear you tonight. We cannot wait. So right before you come on the stage, I want to let everybody know there are cards on your table. As you're listening to Byron and being inspired and curious, write down your questions. We're going to collect them and have a Q&A at the end. And, Civics and Science is all about bringing advances to the public. And so without further ado, Byron, we are glad to have you on this stage to do just that.
You're welcome. All right. How are y'all doing? Right? We're here. It's only been 2 years. I was just saying that this is my first in-person lecture that I've given since the pandemic. Done a lot of stuff on Zoom, and it's weird seeing the other 2/3 of people's body. This is strange. I'm getting used to it. No sense of scale. But it's a real absolute pleasure to be with you all here tonight. And so we're gonna have a great conversation. And I tell a lot of stories. And I use a lot of pictures. So there's gonna be that, but we're gonna get into what this weird thing that we talked about in the title, the Creator Archetype. What in the world are we talking about? We're gonna get into that and why it's so important. And it's not just some newfangled language, but I actually think it's mission critical that we all start to embrace in whatever language. We'll talk about our framework, but there's a ton, you're absolutely right. There's a ton of alignment with what we're doing, what Brain Health is doing, what the center has been doing, and Sandy, the work that you've been doing for years is to be highly commended. So thank you all for building such an excellent platform for this conversation. All right, here we go. Diving in, 21st century learners, the Creator Archetype. When we first started saying 21st century, that was kind of a big deal, but we've been in the 21st century now for a couple decades. So it's not as, I was like, come on, y'all, remember 21st century learning. So here we go. go back with me in your time machine to the year 1995. There was fluffy hair mullets and stonewashed jeans. It's pretty cool music. But think about what that experience was. Little Jimmy is starting kindergarten. Actually, let's say it's 1994. Little Jimmy is starting kindergarten. And so he's going through, Jimmy's a smart kid. He's going through school and he goes, grade to grade, first grade, second grade, goes to third grade, fifth grade. He's starting to say, hey, I like gadgets. I like technology. I like computers. What is this MS-DOS thing, And he goes a couple more years and he picks up a book called C++, and he's figuring out, coding and all that stuff. And he's just really interested in computers. So he's all focused. He takes electives in computers and IT, what we would come to know as IT. And then he does great. He actually has great grades. He's excited about school and he graduates. And he graduates in 2007. And then something else happened in 2007. Y'all remember what happened in 2007? Something came out. That was the first year of the iPhone. So let's think about the world in 1994 and then fast forward to 2007. Think about everything that happened over that journey. Think about how different the world was. Y'all remember the Razor and how that was just game-breaking technology? They had the little commercial where the dude threw the phone and stuck in the wall. You're like, wow, it's skinny. What a phone, right? And then the iPhone comes out. And so all of a sudden, I remember having the conversation. I was like, I don't need a phone with apps. They're like, it's called apps. I was like, I don't need a phone with apps. Okay, I just want to call some people, play a little penguin. That's all I'm doing. But if you think about that kid, Jimmy, who cared about technology, who's going to be a computer genius, if all he did was what he got in school, then how ready was he for the world in 2007 now that everything has changed? And we didn't even know how much it changed, but everything has changed, right? And think about how much the world changed just in that period of time. And it's only going faster, y'all. It's only going faster. So, U.S. Department of Labor, 65% of school children will eventually be employed in jobs that have yet to be created. That's actually an old stat. The number's closer to 80% today, right? Technical potential for automation in the US. I put that one up because a lot of times when we're talking about automation, people immediately go to, food service, or they might talk about factories, and you're absolutely right. But also, there's a lot of other industries that are at risk for automation. My old job, investment management. You know who's better at picking stocks? A bot. Way better, right? It's not as cool to be a good math guy when Watson is like, just got a new update. And so, so what do you do there? There's a whole range. They don't even call it blue collar, white collar. They call it new collar now. So I like that too, right? Echo. So one of the other things that there's a couple of books I always point to. One of them is very excited and optimistic about the world ahead of us. It's called the New Machine Age. And then there's another one that's very despotic, just entirely apocalyptic, and it's called Rise of the Robots. This guy named Martin Ford, he's a futurist, and what he said was any job that's repetitive, routine, or predictable is at risk. Any job for automation, right? And the interesting thing is, you even see this at a macro level. Now, this is what I saw back in my former industry. I used to be in investment management at Bank of America. U.S. Trust, now it's called Bank of America Private Bank. And this was a fantastic stat that I love talking about because it really kind of scales back and zooms out and looks at the value What drives value in the economy these days, right? So what they did was they looked at the S&P 500. They looked at it in 1975, and then they looked at it every decade till you got to 2015. And they were looking at what's the difference? What's the percentage between hard assets and soft assets? Hard assets is, things you can touch, right? Inventory, all that kind of stuff, the hardware, the real estate, right? And then I looked at soft assets, things like intellectual property, things like brand equity, things like the expectation of success, things that are a little bit more ephemeral, right? Things that are soft. Well, look at the difference. 1975, you had about 83% of the S&P 500 was driven by value of hard assets. Fast forward 40 years, 2015, you have the complete inverse. Over 80% soft assets drive market value now. So if we know that's the case, right? This is the world that we're actually in, and it's only accelerating in the change. How in the world do you tell today's little Jimmy, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? You don't know. Jimmy certainly doesn't know. We don't even know the specific jobs, careers, and everything that's going to exist. Did y'all see what Facebook was talking about the other day? Right? They're saying, we're going to introduce you to essentially virtual living. And it's crazy, right? So we're in the era of Jetsons right now. I do not yet have a Rosie. I would love her. She is fantastic. She's a robot that cleaned everything up. I am also still looking forward to mass transportation by conveyor belts. That has not materialized yet, but it's right around the corner, I'm sure. But this is a world that we're actually in right now. How in the world are you going to prepare a young person for a world that's so dynamically evolving that we can't even imagine it? How do you do that? A lot of times people will be like, well, shoot, I don't know. We're screwed, right? But we're not. There actually is a way. And that's what we're talking about here tonight. For a person to access opportunity in society today and beyond, it's really basic. It requires genuine creativity and building complex relationships with people. Think about that macroeconomic example I just brought up, right? Intellectual property. We know that's what's driving value. Well, where are we driving the skill sets for that? How do you do it? Now, we got K-12 education systems. A lot of times they get kicked around talking about standardized tests, and that's one of the limiting factors. It's ask any educator. They would prefer not to be tied to these exact standards. And I know we got some people in the room here that could probably amen that, right? But also, if you look at higher ed's not that much better. And it doesn't matter what kind of school you're talking about. It doesn't matter. You could be talking about Ivy League. You could be talking about state school, community college. We do have a time machine, and it's our education systems. And it's not because the people doing the work at the ground level don't want to evolve. It's just we have a lot of strengths and constraints on the ability for us to implement this kind of learning for young people. So while we're in the middle of changing, you also need partnerships. That's what Big Thought is all about. We're partners. We're partners with our school districts, with our institutions, to allow young people to go out and build the kinds of muscles that people need for a 21st century world. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's go back to this creativity thing. It's a new look at creativity, because oftentimes when you hear creativity, let's just be honest. Well, let me actually tell you another little quick story. So I was doing a presentation to a group of CEOs, entrepreneurs. It's YPO. if you guys have ever heard of that, and it's an organization similar to that. And so I was out there talking to them, and I was talking about this concept, this notion of creativity. I asked everybody in the room, I was like, put your hands up if you're creative. Like 3 dudes put their hands up. Full room. 3 guys threw their hand up in the air. And I was like, okay, tell me about yourself. He's like, well, you guys don't know this, but I play in a band. I was like, okay. Yeah, man. All right, cool. Good band if nobody in this room knew about it. But I was talking to the other guy. What do you do? He's like, I paint. I was like, cool. You notice they went to the arts, which is great, because people think about that oftentimes. But when you think about a creative person, and you ask an adult to say, hey, who's creative? Usually you get this bohemian, whimsical person with like a wizard hat and maybe flowing robes and whatnot, and can't keep anything straight, and just a whole mess, but they create beauty and gorgeousness. That person's creative. I'm in a room of entrepreneurs who created a business that solved a specific problem and are making lots of money doing it, and none of them thought they were creative. Think about that. What's funny is that we put creativity, we have usually put it in this box. It belongs in the box of butterflies, daffodils, rainbows, and unicorns. And kids get to be creative. Kids get to be creative, man. They have some of the best divergent thinking in the world. Some of it is because they have undeveloped brains. But actually, that's kind of part of it. Because when you look at the brain of a child, especially a young child, you ask that 6-year-old what their day was like. You can get a range of different answers. You'll start in one place and you'll end all the way over here, right? And they took you through a wonderful journey to get there. And then you're home and you're like, okay, well, that was the 20-minute ride. Let's go inside, right? But now you ask an older child or one of us. When somebody gets home and your significant other says, hey, how was the day? It's a day. The neurons of a child, especially before they get to the age of 9, before pruning has taken place, you have such just robust architecture, infrastructure. It's almost kind of this undisciplined, beautiful connectivity, right? Little kids are some of the most creative beings on the planet. But as we grow older, things, actually neurologically, physiologically, pruning takes place in your brains. You actually kind of let go some of more of the inefficient pathways in your mind. And also what happens is, that's just how things are, right? We start to become a little bit more rigid, more concrete in our thinking, more black and white, if you will. That's actually not conducive to the world that we're in. That lack of flexibility, that lack of pliability, that lack of the ability to be divergent thinkers and draw connections that weren't just immediately relevant and obvious doesn't fit. Ask anybody who went through this little thing called a pandemic, where we had to change and adapt quickly, right? And anybody trying to do something the way it's always been done, you could try to wedge that into the world. That had terrible results. So how do we build creativity? How do we start to value it differently? World Economic Forum, top 10 skills, creativity shows up significantly there. McKinsey did a study on the impact of artificial intelligence on the world. What they said is automation and AI will lift productivity and economic growth, but millions of people worldwide may need to switch occupations or upgrade skills. Sounds like pliability to me, right? Mental flexibility. LinkedIn. This was the one that got me. LinkedIn. They did a study across all industries, across all sectors, including the boring ones, right? Everybody knows the first job that comes to mind whenever I say, like, pick a boring job. Somebody's like, accountant. And then it was like an accountant who said it. I was like, come on, man. Across all sectors, the number one skill set, they call them soft skills at the time, was creativity across every industry. And that's 2019. So what's interesting is the people who look at these things, who are looking at workforce, who are looking at needs, who are looking across the sectors, who really just kind of study these things, right? They're in their Ivy Tower with their fancy little, glasses and pocket protectors, and they're saying, wow, creativity really, really matters in a very tactical and strategic way for people to be successful in life. They're naming it. McKinsey, LinkedIn, Gallup, World Economic Forum, they're calling these things out. But we have an issue, y'all. Couple things. Creativity and social emotional skills are starting to dominate the list of the most highly desired skills. 2015, creativity showed up for the first time in the top 10. World Economic Forum, Future Jobs Report. 2020, it moved to 3. And for the first time, emotional intelligence showed up. I'll give you a reason why. Let me give you a great example. So going back to that McKinsey report, they use an example. So we know automation is going to eliminate tons and tons of jobs, right? And you can yell at people about, automation, but they'll tune you out with their noise canceling earbuds that technology has helped us build. The bottom line is it's going to keep innovating. Technology is going to do what technology does. It always has done, right? But there are so many opportunities that are actually being created as well. Again, names that we don't even have for them yet. We don't even know what they're going to be. But one of the things that seems to be a trend is this: even the jobs that we need more of, that we actually know the name for today, are going to fundamentally change. McKinsey says the significant impact for automation is not just job elimination, it's the transformation of the things that we thought we knew. They use an example of an ER nurse. So because of AI, 60% of the job of an ER nurse today is going to be eliminated. 60% of the things that they spend their time on right now going to be eliminated. Things that are administrative, organizational. If you think about patient data, having to go to the charts, all that kind of stuff, bots are doing it, algorithms, tying it all together, which means, and this is bad news for you introverts, you're going to have to spend more time with people. And matter of fact, what they're saying is the reduction in roles that are going to be eliminated because of artificial intelligence, you're going to see a corresponding increase in the need for emotional intelligence skills, social and emotional skills. If you think about how the healthcare industry is being compensated now, it's with results. And one of the primary things, so I've had a few careers. One of my first careers was drug dealing for Pfizer. And one of the biggest challenges that they would have is not just knowing which drug to prescribe or what to advise the patient to do, it's the patient doing it, right? And there's a ton of unspoken, unsaid, unscripted reasons why a person doesn't do what they're supposed to do. I could, believe it or not, I could go and get in the best of shape. I know what to do. I don't do it. Why? Because of a lot of stuff that happened to me growing up as a kid, right? Like, there's reasons for why people are not compliant. But it's the social and emotional skills that allow us to take all these things that technology has given us in the palm of our hands and translate it to human behavior, human relevance, sales. You think about all of these different things that technology has given us the ability to use. What we're no longer going to have a ton of use for is somebody, like I said, who might just be a great engineer. Put me in my cubicle and let me do what I want to do. I don't need a cubicle for a computer, but I need you to go make this relevant to that board, to that client, to that mother and father, to that kid? How good are you at translating? That's the questions that we're now starting to ask the folks who are stepping into the workforce. And I tell you that for anybody who has a GED to a couple of PhDs, it's the same across the board. So creativity and social emotional skills, the ability to have this divergent thinking, complex problem solving, critical thinking, put those all under the same category of being able to have creative thinking, right? All right, so we see that's important. Now I'm gonna tell you another story. Adele Turner, that's where I grew up. That was my elementary school, Oak Cliff, Redbird area. I grew up in Southern Dallas. My mom's a teacher, and I say that as she's retired, but you know, once a teacher, always a teacher. You never are not a teacher, right? So my mom's a teacher, and she was my first teacher, of course, but also imbued the importance of education. Adele Turner, great school, felt more like a family than a school even. Phenomenal. I learned to love myself, my identity. We didn't have Black History Month. We had Tuesday, right? Like it was just part of our identity. It was part of everything, right? We were steeped in it. So I learned to love who I was and to be comfortable in my own skin. Also one of the coolest things that ever happened is this would never happen today because of liability, but they took us 5th grade to DC, New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta. They took us on this trip and it changed my life, y'all. I remember walking to the top of the Statue of Liberty and looking outside over the water, and that's where the first idea occurred to me that the world is big, but I have a place in it. That was my 5th grade class at Adele Turner. I don't know how we paid for that. We must have sold a lot of chocolate. So that was Adele Turner. And then I crossed the Trinity to Green Hill. So high school, I went to Green Hill. And I'll tell you how that happened. So I was at my middle school. It was Spence, great school, fantastic place. Met a mentor named Donald Payton, who was my history day coach. So it was my nerd outlet. TAG, Talented and Gifted Magnet, was the school within a school. And so they didn't know I was in TAG because I saw how some of those TAG kids were treated. And I was like, I can play basketball. So I don't know what's going on with all those other guys. They found out I was in TAG the last day of school. I got on the little short bus. They're like, "You're in TAG?" I am. Have a great life. I'll see y'all later. But my mentor told me about this school called Green Hill. So I took a trip up there, did a tour, and I'm walking, and this kid's giving me the whole tour. And it's like, he's a nice kid. And so we're walking around. They have literal green hills. And as we're going from the main administration building, Three Chimneys building, to my high school class I was going to be sitting in on, a peacock walks by. And I said, "Wait, David, there's a peacock right there, man." He's like, yeah, we have peacocks. I was like, "Y'all just have peacocks? I thought y'all were the Hornets." He's like, "Yeah, but there's peacocks who live here." I was like, "I want to go to the school with magical birds of paradise meandering about. I want to go to that school." I didn't even go to one class. I knew I wanted to go there. So I went to Green Hill, and it was fantastic. I struggled when I first got there. And when I first got there, I struggled because I had not known that they expected me to argue with teachers. That's how I interpret it. There's one kid raised his hand and he said, "I thought the book sucked." And I was like, "Oh my God. This kid's going to wherever the principal's office is. I'm not sure. I just got here, but he's going." And then they started to have this debate, right? So they had a Socratic situation right there where you engage a different type of thinking, a different type of critical thinking, a different type of engagement of the material, right? And also that young people have a voice and that your opinion matters. And also you're not going to get in trouble for saying it. Like, it was different for me. I struggled, but I got the hang of it. And it served me extraordinarily well. And here we are today. Actually, not today. That's an old picture. My kids are older than that now. But relatively today, and the life that I've been able to live has benefited greatly from each one of those stops. And in each one of those stops, I had a lot of things that helped me build some of those creative assets. A lot of it I got in school, but a lot of it I got out of school. And I was always in Odyssey of the Mind. Anybody ever heard of Destination Imagination? Okay, right? The Odyssey of the Mind. The little raccoon on the t-shirt, that was me back in the day. Model United Nations, did all of that stuff, Math Olympiad, track, football. I was always in something. Theater, I stopped playing basketball because I wanted to be the voice of the plant in Little Shop of Horrors. So Audrey too, that was me. Feed Me Seymour. I could do it right now, but I'm not going to. But I was always involved in something. I was always engaged in something outside of the classroom. And the reason why is interesting. It's because of this lady right here, my mama, Molly Sanders. She was Google before Google existed. She knew where to find all the free stuff because we ain't had no money. She was always willing to sacrifice to take me there. She was always the one, like the little things on the bulletin board that I didn't know to think about all of it. I just knew, I was like, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? When something's ending, I was getting involved in something else. Molly Sanders. And because of her, I got a ton of skills that helped. The reason why I'm not nervous, I found out there were 2,000 people registered tonight. And I instead of getting nervous, I got excited. It's because I was in theater for 5 summers in a row. Now, when I was doing theater, nobody ever said, hey, Byron, at some point, you're going to need really good presentation skills for, the sales job that you're going to get right out of college. And then eventually you're going to have to be standing up on a stage and talking with people about an idea and helping compel folks to, join a mission and a movement that, could possibly affect other people's lives. Nobody ever said that. I was energetic and my mom wanted to put me in theater. How many of you have some skill that you use regularly, that you fall back on regularly, that didn't come from your Algebra 2 class, right? It might have come from sports, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. It might have come from a whole range of different things. But that was your whole story. You're more than your transcript. You're more than your AP classes. You're more than the class that you might not have done well in, right? Here's an interesting thing. Some of the kids that end up in, let's say, alternative education, some of the kids who end up getting kicked out of school, some of the kids who might end up in alternative economic pathways, we'll say that. They have a lot of the same transferable skills that could have worked somewhere else. Think about that. What if we started to value those kinds of things differently? And not just acknowledge them, but actually have ways to develop them and then measure and track. What can we do with that, huh? I did well in school, and I told you I was always involved and engaged in something, but there's another reason why we need to start thinking differently about how we're creating these learning experiences for youth. It says trauma-informed care in ACEs. Care in ACEs is covered up, but that's cool. It's translation. But here's the thing. So that picture was me smiling, standing next to my mom. Love my mom. She still lives in Oak Cliff, like right down the street from the elementary school. But home wasn't always great. So I grew up in a house where there was a lot of domestic violence. So my dad would attack my mother on a regular basis. And, I had straight A's. But you want to know why I had straight A's? I had straight A's because I needed good news. I needed to bring home something that would make my dad smile, that would make him happy, that would be a good distraction. So not only did I have good grades, but I wanted to be involved in theater because I wanted him to come to the show. I wanted to be involved in track. And when I got to track practice, I was busting my tail because I need to get a medal because I need to be able to run in and say, Dad, look. I wanted to, I needed to be Model United Nations and Destination Imagination because my mother would be the one to take me. And when my mom took me, then we weren't at home and she was safe. I excelled because that kept my mother safe. ACEs affects the brain. I had to deconstruct a lot of the things that I dealt with growing up. Adverse childhood experiences, and some people actually call them paravases because across all groups, Black and Hispanic children were exposed to more adversities compared with white children, and income disparities and exposure were larger than racial and ethnic disparities. Adverse childhood experiences are actually ubiquitous. Trauma happens across all demographics. But the things that don't exist in low-income areas and disinvested communities are the buffers. There is no therapy. There is no escape. It's consistent, it's persistent. And even for the kids where it presents like nothing's wrong, something could be. I was one of those kids. And it affected my life in significant ways. Go to therapy monthly now. And man, it saved my life. But if we think about if we were to layer in the importance of social and emotional well-being and these creative expressions to a young person's journey, think about how many kids that you would capture with stories that you would never know about. Think about how many of them would be able to be those people who knew how to contribute to a create economy and also knew how to be well while they were doing it. Wow, wouldn't that be something, right? Another reason why we need to think differently about the assets that we're investing in for young people. So here's where we get to the sauce. The creator archetype. So big thought, we do a lot. So if you go to the website, just get ready. But it's all about creating creators for a 21st century world. There's a multiple different dimensions that we look at, but when you look at all the different mechanisms of action, the creator archetype is the framework that we built to help not only guide, but give language to all the different domains that we should be thinking about to create ready young people who will, believe it or not, turn into adults who are ready to thrive and build something amazing. So creativity, the ability to imagine new ways of problem solving, approaching challenges, making connections, or creating products. Creativity is not based on a formula, but on thinking that relates to discovery and inquiry. It's creativity and learning by Gallup. Great report. You can pull it down. Great PDF. So what we're saying is we should calibrate ourselves toward intentionally building the assets that make creators. That's what we're saying. We did this archetype to give language and a map toward doing that. 205 local insights. So we did kind of focus on the regional area, but we were drawing from expert literature from all over the country. American Institute for Research, Burning Glass, Institute for the Future is one of my favorites. So whenever you guys get a chance, check out Institute for the Future. Drawing from a lot of different places and spaces for us to pull together what we said were 5 domains that are the big categories of what makes a 21st century learner, a 21st century creator. And the reason why we say creator is because one of the things that became very clear in industry, and I know you all have seen it as well, oftentimes you can get somebody with the best GPA in the world. They might have come from a fantastic school, but then I've heard, some of my curmudgeonly friends who might own businesses and are hiring folks, they're like, yeah, I brought in this smart kid. He's pretty smart. I was like, why'd you trail off like that? He's like, well, I always got to tell him what to do. He's not figuring it out. I needed him to bring me some solutions. And I'm over here directing him every step of the way. Where's the agency? I need you to live on the frontiers of possibility instead of waiting on a syllabus. That's what a creator does. So here are the domains. The biggest one, believe it or not, social and emotional learning. The research suggests that if you want somebody who can pick up new content, who can adjust, who can take the punch of a pandemic and then be able to still thrive through it, that's somebody who understands who they are, understands their voice, their value, and the value of others, and understands how to regulate their own brain to maximize their effectiveness in the world. Social emotional learning sometimes gets a fluffy, tag. It ain't fluffy, y'all. It's power. Matter of fact, you find a teacher who's mastered embedding social emotional learning in their classroom management is no longer their problem because people are managing themselves. Kids actually have power to make decisions because they have the tools to make decisions and master their own mind. It's beautiful. Academics and artistry. That's what you see typically happening in the 8 to 3 blocks of a school day. Your reading, writing, arithmetic, and also the actual practical skills that you learn in artistic disciplines like dance, theater. Notice we put those in the same category because you're using the same parts of your brain. Digital fluency. Now, this is something that we have to say out loud, but kids, you don't. My little 2-year-old nephew, when he was 2, he flung a magazine across the room. And I was like, what is wrong with EJ? And his mom was like, he does that sometimes because he's trying to move all the pictures with his finger and it's not sliding. So he just gets a little angry. I was like, you gotta be, but yeah, every flat surface that he had known moves. And this broken thing right here is not, so you need to fix it, right? Digital fluency, but not just how to use technology, how to do it smartly. Data analytics, where to go get the information, how to do it safely, how to not be duped. Wouldn't that be helpful if the world knew a little something about that, right? So digital fluency, critical. Design thinking, human-centered design. Wow, man, if I had that skill set, if somebody had explicitly taught me that early on in life, I felt like I'd be even further. But how do we actually use these principles of bringing something from idea to creation and then multiple iterations? Design thinking. The last one, civics and service. Understanding that whatever I do, me living my best life absolutely has an effect on somebody else's ability to live theirs. So what's my responsibility? To add that lens to my decision making. It's how we'll keep Skynet from happening, right? If anybody's familiar with Terminator 2, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should. Think about the unintended consequences. Think about those from the most marginalized communities who will be affected by it. We have to be teaching that. That's a creator. Snap, I pushed the wrong button. What did I do? I don't even know what I did. You're so helpful. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move to an example of how that happens. So I'll use an example of creative solutions and I'll wrap here because I want to be able to get to the Q&A part. Creative Solutions is a program that we've been doing for about 30 years. It's actually an arts as workforce trauma-informed program. We actually do it with the juvenile justice system. Young people are referred to us after they have been incarcerated and are on probation, and we help them finish well. They come to us 7 weeks. You choose 1 or 2 tracks. You're paid a stipend, so you literally are working as an artist. You choose 1 or 2 tracks. You're going to do either the visual arts track or the performing arts track. This is a picture of the play that was written, scripted, choreographed, music produced, all of that by the youth, along with teaching artists. These young people have gone through, on average, 14 distinct traumatic events before they show up at our doorstep. 6 decreases your life expectancy of about 20 years. So put that in context. So a lot of these young people have been maybe kicked out of school, certainly are going through a lot. But when they go through this program, what's amazing is we guide them through creative experiences that allow them to, 1, recognize the voice that they already had inside of them, see their own beauty, see the beauty in others, and then be able to clear the deck so they can think about what's good for me tomorrow? Great case in point of a project that does that. We call them life masks. You guys might have heard of kind of the Victorian era. They used to make these death mask plasters, right? So creepy, super creepy. But we call them life masks. So they go through this whole experience. Think about what you have to do in order to make it. You got to be still. You have to breathe. Very similar to something that you do whenever you're trying to settle your brain, right? Move from the amygdala to your frontal lobe. Relax. You have to be still because you got to set the plaster. The second thing you do is realize you can't do it yourself. You can't plaster your own face. I tried. No, I didn't. I would never try that. But you can't plaster so you have to rely on your counterparts, on other people who have been in juvenile detention. They're the ones you're trusting. And you know what? You do, because we've created a safe space where that can happen. And it's a beautiful thing to see him doing. You walking up to him, it's like, hey man, you good? He's like, I'm good. You all right, bro? I'm good. You have people checking in on you, folks that you didn't know before. You finish, it hardens, and we're like, hey, decorate it. Put some gold on it, bedazzle it, make it, get your jewelry going, right? Make it beautiful. And they do that. They decorate it, and then we put it up on the wall. We say, look at it, now call yourself beautiful. First time a lot of them have been encouraged to do it, and the first time that you do it in front of a group, and the first time a bunch of other people walk by and say the same thing. It's those kinds of experiences. They go through and they do some amazing stuff. And what's interesting about this program is we don't have a screen on offenses. So we'll take aggravated assaults. We'll take people who've committed sexual assaults. We'll take kids who've done, a range of different things, but hurt people hurt people. That's why it's called trauma informed. It's trauma to healing. And it's not just about making people feel good about themselves, practical utility, because you know what? A good program, no program gets you about 60, 80% recidivism rate, unfortunately. Recidivism, likelihood to reoffend, go back into the system. A good program will get you maybe high 30s, low 40s, significantly better, right? This program, 7-year average is 9%. Our team is amazing. They are fantastic. They're highly trained on a lot of very intentional practices. This isn't something that you just roll out of bed and do, right? But if we recalibrate ourselves, this is a program. If we know the results are that strong, lowest in Dallas County, why is it just a program? Why isn't this just what our juvenile justice system does for young people? You know how much money it costs to incarcerate a young person for a year? Between $62,000 and $63,000. That's Harvard. Think about it. My Green Hill tuition, or the one that I just paid for these kids, it's about half that. You'd be better off sending a kid to a fully paid for private school than incarcerating them for even half a year. Think about that. What are we doing? But it's that kind of stuff that has radiating effects throughout society. Not only are you preparing them for a creative economy, but we're saving money on the justice end. You're investing in human capital. We're not wasting time and resources. Think about it. This is another picture of art being created. I'd go on and on and on. We have so many examples of this happening. We have a great project with Citibank where you do these kinds of creative experiences. Entrepreneurialism, which is another form of creativity, can happen. It's beautiful. These things can happen if we recalibrate ourselves to embed a creator archetype framework in our systems. Measure our work by how we match up against those domains. Care about something more than their standardized test scores. Invest in them beyond their SAT aptitude and capabilities. Look at them as whole human beings because they are. And not only is this something that'll be better for our schools, it'll be better for society. That little dude right there, that's my boy. That's Bryce. I love this picture of him because we're at the Frontiers of Flight Museum. He looked like that the whole time. Look at the imagination that's lighting up in his eyes. Look at the wonder, the hope. My baby boy is going to be good. He doesn't have that trauma that I had growing up. He's got opportunity galore. My kids are fine. But you know, we got a school district out here, 150,000 kids. Dallas alone, 16th largest school district in the country. You got a lot of families who love their kids as much as I love mine, as much as you love yours. We got to ask the question, are we getting them ready for the right kind of world? Because that world is going to exist one way or another, whether we change or not. So let's make sure we're focused on creating creators. Because if we do that, we're doing justice. Thank you all so very much. I really, really appreciate you all.
That was awesome. Okay. Do I need to use the mic? Okay. Do I have another mic? Oh, here. Sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. First of all, we are marching in the same parade. We are, so many of the things you're talking about, like you're not defined, SMART is not about GPA.
That's right.
SMART is not about, calibrate ourselves to be creative thinkers. Yeah. Human capital. We talk about brain capital all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm totally blown away. So number one, and I just think creativity, instilling that and making us possibility thinkers for ourselves across our lifespan could be so game changing, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
So here comes some questions. Number one, I love the example you gave. We've had experiences like this, asking that group of entrepreneurs, who's creative? And nobody's creative. So I think, sometimes it's, I've worked with somebody who started many, many very successful companies and always thought, I'm just not creative. So how do you start to kind of flip the script for people? Because I think it starts very young and thinking about, well, I'm just not.
So thank you. That's the question. That's actually part of we did our strategic plan like 3 years ago. One of the things that we said is we need to start to reclaim the narrative on creativity. And that's why we call it the creator archetype. Because really, what are you doing? What are we trying to do? We're trying to help empower and equip thinkers and doers, right? So what I think we have to do is get fairly influential people who are sitting in either seats of power or significant influence and help them recognize just how critical of an asset this is to humanity and what we need to be doing, not would like to do or would be nice to do, but we have to start to connect the dots. So one of the things that we're working on is talking with business leaders on what's your creative story. I'll use a perfect case in point. One of my good friends is the CEO of Textron Systems. Textron Systems is under the Bell Helicopter parent company umbrella, right? So she was telling me about a project that they were working on with the Department of Defense. And their job was to reimagine the cockpit for a helicopter. And so they had very seasoned engineers working on this project because this was kind of a big deal. But they kept coming up with like a 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 version of what they had already had. And it wasn't cutting the mustard. The department was like, hey, China's got all this other stuff and we need y'all to get with the program because this ain't, this is not next gen stuff. Come on. And so what she did was she went out and hired video game designers, graphic designers, and somebody whose job's name is ideator, and put them on the same team with these engineers, and they came up with something that looked like the movie Minority Report. Like, it was amazing. It was amazing. And they did it, and they did well, and they got the job and all this stuff. So, this had a multi-million-dollar price tag on the decision. The issue was this. She had engineers she was already paying to create something. Why didn't they have the ability to, in and of themselves, be able to have the kind of divergent thinking that would allow them to break out of the mold of what they might have been doing for the last decade or so? Why did they have to go and hire 3 extra people? It was inefficient with time, inefficient with resources. So what if those engineers, while they were learning all the math and while they were working on a few projects that might have been a little bit creative where they had to go do something, what if they had opportunities to have these really creative learning experiences where they knew how to get outside of the things that they had always done and already knew how to do? What if that was just how they looked at the world? So when you point out ideas in specific circumstances like that, it can help people get to why creativity isn't just this nice little puppy that's, sitting in our lap. It's something that can move nations. It can solve climate crisis. It could materially save lives. That's the narrative that we need to reclaim. And those specific examples we need to start elevating.
I love that. I think that it's something that people don't realize. You can build your creativity. You can strengthen your creativity. And so if we always had that mentality all along of breaking through, looking at things in different ways, always looking for the next best thing, that would change it, right?
100%.
Okay, here's the next question. Do you consider creativity and curiosity to be synonymous, or how would you distinguish the two?
That's great. I don't think that they're synonymous. I think that you have to have curiosity in order to be creative. There are a few people who can just intuit things, right? Sometimes they have medicinal help, and but there are people who just have the ability to just think of something that's never existed before, right? But oftentimes, creativity is really about connecting dots. So one of our programs, Thriving Minds, the after school program, we have a phenomenal team led by James Adams, our OST director, and out of school time OST. It's a multidisciplinary set of experiences. We need them to have a wide variety of experiences because it's hard to tell somebody who's been narrowly confined to, even if it's pretty deep learning, you don't get new ideas by just doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again. That's why travel is so important. And when you're poor, you don't get to do that oftentimes. And so, that whole idea, like, you can't imagine what you've never seen. Creativity comes with experience, touching things, seeing things, hearing them. And the more and more you get those opportunities, the more curious people are. There are some people, there's a spectrum. Folks are naturally curious, but I guarantee you can build a capacity for curiosity with young people. Guess what? Give them cool experiences. When you do that, they're like, I want some more of that dopamine hit.
That's right.
So what else we got, right? That's how you do it.
Awesome. Okay. So the way we think is generational a lot of times, right? So how do you help parents adjust when their children are going through these very transformational programs? How do you work with parents in that kind of new defining transforming relationship?
Yeah, that's such a good question because it's sometimes parents are some of the biggest barriers. I'll just be honest with you, to creating creative learning experiences. And across the board, public school, private school, I've been in both settings, right? So in private school, this is, I can say this because my wife also is a private school teacher. After, and then I went there, I know there's a lot of parents who are like, hey, I need my kid to take the highest level math. And she's like, well, I don't know if that's really the best thing for this particular kid. They're like, well, I hear you. Also, put them in the math, please, if you don't mind. I would like them to take this specific math. And then you're like, okay, cool. But I think your kid would benefit from having an experience maybe in statistics, not because statistics is easier, but because they're engaged in that type of learning, right? It's a narrative and context that comes with that particular mathematic, right? Those kinds of recommendations. Oftentimes, because parents see the way the world worked, because their only, I guess, contextual anchor is their experience, they oftentimes don't quite understand when you're doing something that might seem like, so you're just gonna let them play. You're just gonna play. I'm paying $30,000 a year for these kids to come here and play. Yes. Yes. Not a control, like a contextualized, intentionally structured opportunity for young people to discover, imagine, create, fail. That is absolutely what we should be doing. Learning by doing as opposed to learning by regurgitating. You didn't do anything successful just because you turned in a assignment or a worksheet or something. You did something successful when you built something and it had an outcome that you were trying to get to, or it had an outcome that you weren't trying to hit, but you learned something because I'm not going to do that again, right? So those are the kinds of experiences, but that means we have to have more freedom as educators. We have to have more freedom as youth development specialists. We cannot be tied so stringently to standardized testing and overly structured learning environments. And if we can break ourselves out of that, then we got a real shot. And it's not just decisions that are made here at the classroom. It's not even decisions that are made by superintendents. It's policy changes that have to happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. So many. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Sandy. Cannot refuse that.
I'm going to repeat that for the people online. Sandy has said that I'm gifted, and I just want y'all to know that part.
No, but you have hit a heartstring, a brain string for us, for me in particular. This people in, because this thing about juvenile detention just really breaks my heart. And what you've done, we have to partner with you because we have to make sure that they go on to thrive. So, oh, please, let's partner on that. It's so, there's so much potential that goes untapped. And I love what you're doing. We need you.
We are going to do something, Sandy. I'm sure, and so I'm going to give y'all kind of a secret. And we have been working quietly with Fort Worth Independent School District for the past couple of years on answering the challenge that we got from a young man who graduated from our Creative Solutions program. It happens in community, so it doesn't happen in a school-based setting. He said, "Why did I have to go to jail before I got something that changed my life?" I will never forget that. And that forced us to say, okay, what do we need to do to go further upstream? So one of the things that we're working on, you're going to hear a lot more about it in the upcoming months, is we have quietly started, along with Fort Worth ISD, an alternative education school. So we are now taking over and working alongside Fort Worth ISD team in order to reimagine what alternative ed looks like. Those are kids who are referred to us on disciplinary referrals, which is oftentimes the half step before something happens at a greater level of risk in juvenile detention. And it's going extremely well. We've got some amazing stories, but this is just the beginning. And we do need to talk to you because
We do because our brain was wired to be innovative, and yet after elementary school, there's almost zip on what that means. And we have shown that the brain can rewire. It's kind of some of the things you're saying, whether you're middle school, high school, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, this state of despair that we're in, innovation is the most powerful drug. More powerful than magic mushrooms.
Yeah, it is. It is, as I am told,
I know.
more powerful
I'm
than magic
guessing,
mushrooms.
but whoa, I love the whole thing that you're saying because the brain changes very dramatically. Ruth was saying, Bruce Mao, who's a design thinker, we have to design for all human beings.
There you go.
The way we think and change, and that for individuals' agency.
Yes.
That it's not, we can't do it for them. But this person, if he's given agency, can do so much if we just believe in him. Thank you for an incredibly inspiring talk.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Y'all stay there. Can you see me okay on the, not that that's important. It's more important to see them. All right, so now I'm going to practice my soft selling skills since we know how important they are. First of all, Byron, cannot thank you enough. And Jen, thanks for, I mean, we wish we had an hour for discussion because it's so important. So thank you again for that. So raise your hand if you want to outlive your brain health by 20 years. Think about the question. This is, you don't.
No, that's good. That's good.
You don't. See, you make them think, Byron.
That's good. That's
This
a good
is
one.
all right.
Put that
So
one in my pocket.
listen, we need your help. The kids Byron's trying to reach need your help. This isn't just a good idea. It's not just feel good. We need your help. How many of you know 5 people with a brain? Come on. I want to see every hand go up. Here's your challenge. Here's your challenge. We need your help because we need you and 5 of your friends and family to join the BrainHealth Project. And if you want to invite more than 5, feel free. We need your help. Byron needs your help. These kids need your help. Tamela and Leslie, we will get together. We're going to make this work. Partnerships make this happen. We had this concept about building brain healthy communities. Byron just said it. That's how you win with community. So don't forget, none of us do this without your help. We're both not-for-profits. We're going to partner up. We're going to make this hum. Thank you for coming tonight, but please don't leave it here, right? Take action. We all need to help. Thank you.